Good evening. My name is Sandra Craig, and I represent the Etiquette Foundation of Illinois. You are watching a live call-in television program brought to you on CAN TV 21. Let's talk etiquette. During the next 25 minutes, my very special co-host will be none other than Mr. Nathan Wright.
Once again, we are back together, and it's always a pleasure to be your co host.
Thank you. I feel the same way about you, Mr. Wright. To our viewers, we have a dynamic topic for you today. I know you're going to want to call in and talk to us and give us your comments and your concerns and your questions. Our phone number is 312-738-1060. Now, let me tell you what we're talking about today. Illinois' conceal carry versus civility, and also stand your ground law. I want to give you some information about the stand your ground law. A law which places no obligation on a potential victim of crime to retreat and call police. The potential victim is instead allowed to respond to force with force, even if flight is a possibility. It's the law that allows people to stand their ground pretty much anywhere instead of retreating if they reasonably believe doing so is necessary to prevent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself or another, or to prevent the commission of a forcible felony. In short, the law allows people to take the law in their own hands if they perceive danger. The law passed in 2005. It passed in the state Senate. It was 39-0. And in the state House, it was 94-20. And it was signed by Jeb Bush. I would like to tell you the definition of civility. Courtesy, a polite action or expression, civilized conduct, or an exchange of civilities. My question to you is, do you believe the stand your ground law is a direct violation to someone's civil or civility rights? Please call us at 312-738-1060. Our phone lines are now open. All righty, Mr. Wright. How do you feel about stand your ground law?
I think it's an invitation to escalate and to, unfortunately, cause great bodily harm to someone because of an incidental event. Nothing of any major consequences other than I feel like I'm not going to back down towards you simply because it's my legal right to stand my ground, even if it means me having to take your life in order to defend that ground. And that's where the real confusion is going to come into play as time passes and more people stand their ground and take actions that is take the action of deadly force to resolve an incident that should not ever get to that level to have a resolution to.
You're absolutely correct. And also remember now, it's what I perceive. And what I perceive as danger or a threat might not necessarily be true.
That is so
true.
But
once I pull the gun and you're on the ground, it's too late to say, oh, maybe he wasn't going to harm me.
Yes, that's so true.
I believe perception.
And it's all in your head what that represents.
And that's kind of hard when it comes to proving a case. If I say I killed you, how do you know that I didn't just kill you? I said I perceived it. I could say that at the end of the day to say I'm going to get out of this because I perceive danger.
Yes.
That's pretty vague to me.
Absolutely.
And I have a caller on the line. I want to see what they have to say. Caller, you're on the air.
I want to make two quick comments. One, it's not a common sense law. And two, it's a very racist law. There's another person that didn't kill somebody. It was, matter of fact, be a woman. I know her last name was Alexander. She just shot a gun off to get her abused husband to back off. and she's doing 20 years. All right, she's having to be black. And like I said before, we got to wonder. Here, this guy, Zimmerman, okay, he killed a person. He's not doing no time or nothing in jail. All right? Now, if you have the option, this is the situation. If you have the option to walk away or something like that, fine. If you're in a situation, you're supposed to use the reasonable amount of force to stop that person from harming you. If the other person don't have a weapon and you use a gun, you're using too much force to stop someone. And I'm just talking about it's not common sense, whatever. And plus, I'm talking about in Florida, that law is very, very, very racist.
I agree.
Thank you for your call, caller. Mm-hmm. We have another caller. Caller, you're on the air. For your call, caller. We have another caller.
Yes. Good afternoon, guys.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to answer that question with a question. Standing your ground. Is there a law of not retreating? You know, so saying, walk away, you can fight another day. Sometimes common sense. You never know what someone else is doing, but let me tell you something. You get two men together, we are the most craziest goddamn creature on God's green earth. We want to just hoof and puff and listen, bark. And a lot of times, you're waiting for someone else to just walk away, then you bark it. But somewhere along the line, see, it's no more common sense. There's no more retreating. People have really just they've lost their mind. I mean, truly lost their mind. But smart people, you're going to do this. I'm going to walk away because I don't care what you're doing or what you're saying. But if you put your hand on me, then that's a different thing. But if I'm walking away, they are just going to talk, and I ain't never heard a talk hurting anybody. So sometimes we got to be smart. Again, we can't anticipate what someone else is going to do, but you need to anticipate what you're going to do. And that's where I think sometimes people have lost their way. But again, standing your ground, well, you saw in Florida what just happened by standing your ground. So keep on standing your ground, see what's going to happen. Good show all the time. Y'all always have some wonderful topics, but I don't want to hog it. Let me get out there here so I can hear your response, and thank you for taking the call.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
caller.
you, Steve.
Thanks,
now,
Steve.
I want to make this clear, Mr. Wright, to our viewers. In Florida, they did not use the stand your ground law in the George Zimmerman case. But the judge did read the jurors' instructions about stand your ground law, but they didn't use it in the actual case, in the actual trial. And I suspect the reason that they didn't, because when you use the stand your ground law, that means the person that's on trial has to testify. And I don't believe George Zimmerman wanted to testify.
Well, whenever you're in a situation where someone is urging you to stand your ground, and the law is urging you to do that. They're encouraging you to stand your ground. Just like Steve said, if you just walk away, both parties can just simply walk away, and that should end the incident. But if I'm encouraged by the law that tells me I can stand my ground, with however you interpret that, that's still like, some type of foreign interpretation. Everybody got a different definition for that stand your ground. And you're asking people to act violent. The government is encouraging violence. And that's how I actually see this. What do you think, Sandy?
Well, I do believe there's going to be more crime as a result, because we also now have this law where you can carry your weapon, on you. And I believe it is going to be more violence. I really do. With the stand your ground law and the conceal to carry, I really do. And I believe we're going to see, unfortunately, less civility being practiced between one another. I really do believe that. And that's what concerns me. Because at a time when we really need to be pushing more civility, it seems like the law is pushing civility under the bed.
Absolutely.
I just asked for your comments on that.
And for the government, just one other comment. For the government to encourage people to be uncivil, when you're standing your ground, that opens up the door for you to be very uncivil. And whenever you're in that mode, then people are apt to react to that. And this is where the confrontation comes in. So if both parties practice civility and then say, I'm sorry, excuse me, and
Yes.
allow me to go on about my business, that should conclude whatever the incident was that caused them to have some kind of encounter where the whole question about standing your ground is even considered. So the
Yes.
government, I think, has made a tremendous mistake. It's not encouraging civility, it's encouraging the worst kind of incivility.
Yes, I agree with that, Mr. Wright. I believe we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, how y'all guys doing?
Great.
Okay, they always talk about when Joe always talk about conceal weapons. Okay, if Joe talk about can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, now Joe always talk about people should carry a gun. Now George Himmel go get his gun. He get his gun back. Why don't Joe get George Himmel his gun again and see how he like it?
Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that
Yes.
was interesting. Okay, now, Mr. Wright, I have a question for you. Civility is a polite action or expression. Tell me, what happens to civility when I assume you are a suspicious person, based solely on the way you are dressed or your race? So what happens to civility at that point?
Well, that's a person I would think with that kind of mindset is not very interested in civility at that point. They're not very interested in doing the things that contribute to a kind, pleasant interaction with someone. Civility is about the way you smile at a person, the way you may nod your head to show them that you mean them no harm, that you are a civilized individual.
Yes.
So there are subtle ways to express civility. And we're encouraging everyone, as you know,
Yes.
to be more mindful of your manners in public so that you don't set off an incident where the whole question or the whole issue about standing your ground would ever come into somebody's head. And so even if they are provoking it, just simply walk away. Just like Steve said, just walk away. That's all you have to do. And that should conclude the incident, hopefully.
Right, because with this stand your ground law and the conceal to carry, I see it as fuel for more hostility. I really do.
That's exactly what it is.
I see it as fuel for more hostility.
Right.
And with more hostility, we're going to have more violence. And with more
Absolutely.
violence, we're going to have more death.
Absolutely.
And so I really believe that, you know what it reminds me of, Mr. Wright? Of the Wild Wild West. Do you,
Yes.
I mean, honestly, remember
truly.
when you watched the cowboy pictures and
Right.
all the guy had to do was say he drew his gun first, or he posed a threat to me and I shot him. They have a little conversation at the sheriff's office,
Right.
and it's over. Well,
Right.
basically, that's what we've returned to.
Yes.
Because I believe stand your ground encourages vigilante acts, behavior.
Yes.
And you know what vigilante means.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. We are at a wild, wild west stage in this history of this country because anyone now could carry. I would actually prefer if the law was an open carry as opposed to concealed carry.
Yes.
Because then it's obvious that this person has a weapon because it's open. And when it's concealed, you don't know whether or not that person is armed. So that adds fuel
Yes.
to how someone may react to a person. And then you discover once the person pulls their gun that they are in fact armed, and which of course makes a world of difference in how you're going to respond
Right.
to someone who's pulling a weapon on you.
Right.
So it should be open carry as opposed
Because
to conceal.
also, I agree, Mr. Wright, but also what happens is with the conceal to carry, it also promotes fear.
It does.
Because I might get into a dispute with you, an exchange of words, and I'm in fear because I don't know if you have a gun in your purse or on your hip, or somewhere on you.
Yes.
I don't know. So now I'm afraid, and because I'm afraid, I might shoot first.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Could very
that's
easily
why
happen.
I really believe it's going to cause more violence.
It is.
And
Yeah.
I think this law needs to be repealed. I really do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you.
And it's the law in 24 states.
Yes.
24
yes,
states
yes,
have approved this law.
Yes. In another place, Sandra, you're going to see more violence, and that's on our roadways. People cut off each other every day and do things to create hostility among drivers.
Yes.
And it's already well known where drivers have gotten into shootouts.
Yes.
Or one driver shooting into another driver's car. Right here in Illinois, I think some years ago, a child was killed. A baby was killed in a car that was shot into because someone cut someone off on the road. So you're going to see this kind of incivility escalating all over our society, unfortunately.
And we're going to see less of civility being practiced. Is that correct?
Unless we can encourage everyone that's listening to us to practice more civility. This is the solution. Unfortunately, we have to go here. And plus, we have to tell our young men,
Yes.
they're in great danger because you don't know who may be carrying a gun. And you don't know how they may perceive you being young and black and how they may react to you. In their mind, you may be a threat just because of the color of your skin. And so we want our young men to be more mindful of their manners in public so that they avoid the kind of incidents that unfortunately happen in Florida.
Yes, yes. All righty, I believe we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, I listened to your show last week, and I was on hold for the last 5 minutes and didn't get a chance to get on the air. And so I've got several points I'd like to make. Number one, we're the last state out of 50 to grant to have the concealed carry law passed. And you guys were saying that, well, with the passing of this law, it's going to be more violence and, it's going to be just terrible and it's the Wild West and all of that. But the studies have shown that to be true in 49 other states. You guys also mentioned last week that when you come into Chicago, you make sure your windows are locked and you're very nervous and you feel unsecure. Well, imagine the people that live here. I live in Chicago. I live in a good neighborhood, and when I tell you good, I mean really, it's really a great neighborhood in all of the economic indicators and everything else. And I had somebody break into my home, but I met them at the back door. Now, we've got to be able to protect ourselves. There are 10 gangbangers for every police officer right now in the city of Chicago. When you guys talk about how there's going to be more bloodshed and there's going to be more violence, the criminals are already armed. We're just hanging around being their prey. They're preying upon us, so we have to protect ourselves. So, I tend to be more positive than negative, but imagine if you lived in Chicago. You guys live in the suburbs. Everything is great and the sun's shining and, hey, the birds are chirping, the flowers are growing. But here in Chicago, we live in the south and the west sides are two of the most dangerous geographic locations in the United States. And we're literally being massacred. Children are being killed. So if we can't protect ourselves, put it this way: when you need the police, when seconds count, the police are minutes away. So some things for you to consider. Thank you.
Good call.
Thank you for your call.
Good
Thank you for your call.
Yes. First of all, the data that he speaks of is correct. I've looked into this. It's correct in the sense that overall, in those states who have had this law, violence is down. Only in sectors that, of course, aren't the poverty sectors like we have here in Chicago, the violence is up in the poverty sectors of this city. And we believe it's going to be more violence because those people who live in those high risk areas, those communities that are very dangerous, they're going to arm themselves. And they are going to be on the edge each and every time they walk out of their door. And just any little thing happen, I'm 69 years old, so if I'm carrying a gun, I'm going to be as quick as I can to get my gun out. If I suspect or think or imagine someone coming towards me may pose me a threat. So we believe that actually violence is going to be up because those people in those communities, like you said, they have a right to defend themselves, but there's going to be a lot of mistakes made. And unfortunately, most people who have a weapon can't use it very well. And bullets do go down the street and go into people's homes and kill children, because that has happened right here in Chicago on numerous occasions. And so a lot of victims, innocent people, are going to die. And that's the thing that we're trying to avoid as well.
And also, I want to bring out this point, Mr. Wright. The law also allows for someone who has a gun to shoot an unarmed person.
That's true.
And again, it's about perception.
Yes.
It's what you perceive to be a threat, which may not be a threat. And I don't have a weapon, but yet you've killed me because you thought I did. You thought I posed you harm. I do believe violence is going to escalate, and I do believe that this law needs to be repealed.
And one of the reasons I agree with you, one of the reasons we feel this way is because of exactly what happened in Florida. And the ruling of that court that gave a license to use force on any provocation. So it wasn't that kind of test case prior to the incident in Florida that would, to me, as far as I'm concerned, will encourage more violence in the society than less of it.
And I would like to add this point too, Mr. Wright. If I'm unarmed and you're armed, just like in the George Zimmerman case,
Yes.
Trayvon is dead. We never heard his side of the story. We only heard Mr. Zimmerman's side of the story. So we don't know what actually did happen. We just know what we were told. So if you shoot me and I'm dead, then I can tell you that this happened and that happened, and it may not have necessarily went that way. And that's my other problem with that law.
Yeah, you can't speak for yourself because you're dead.
That's right.
Yes,
That's
it's
what, so
my word against the dead person's word.
And so you can claim self-defense, and it may not have been self-defense because I'm not here. I'm no longer here to tell what really did happen. So it's just your word that we have to go on, and we have people dead.
Absolutely.
I strongly say this law needs to be repealed. Stand your ground law needs to be repealed.
And the other thing, you're going to have some premeditated murders. Premeditated murder. I want to kill you, so I go and kill you and claim that you threatened me.
Yes.
You see? So if I want to be, just kill somebody I don't like or have a vendetta against, then I can go and kill them. All I have to do is stage it and say that this person threatened me and I shot them. Only thing I have to be concerned about is that you're dead.
Well, this lady in Florida right now, Marissa Alexander, she's in jail for 20 years. She's already served 3.
Right.
And she claimed the stand your ground law because she had been in a domestic violence situation with her husband. He got up and testified and said he was terrified for his life.
She did.
No, he did.
Oh, he did. Okay.
He got up and said he was terrified because she had this gun and he was terrified for his life. No one was shot. She shot into the wall, but she got 20 years. She couldn't claim stand your ground law. So there is something wrong with this law, period.
Well, she missed. That's what happened there.
Well, she didn't
wasn't shooting straight.
She didn't claim to shoot him.
Oh, okay.
She wasn't trying to shoot him. And she said that she shot in the wall because she wanted to warn him. She could have shot him,
Okay.
but she chose not to. And she
Okay.
thought by saying that she was standing her ground and defending herself
She was
that the
convicted.
court would see that
was
she was
convicted.
doing the right thing.
Yes. Okay.
Well, she's in prison right now
She's
for
in
20
prison.
years.
Right. And it wasn't a racial question involved.
No, they
with
both
that.
were black people and they were husband and wife. So there's really something wrong here.
It is.
It's really something wrong
Yes.
here. I believe we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, just want to say I'm enjoying your show tonight. But since the theme is about civility, last week when the decision with Trayvon Martin came down, something went through me that said I think black and white people look at law differently. Not only is the law set up for blacks and white differently, but we look at it differently. And what I mean by that is when the Trayvon Martin story came out, one of the things that was said was that George Zimmerman called 911 and 911 personnel said, "Do not follow." So that got me to thinking that don't we consider 911 operators extended officers of the law?
I think we better.
That's what I thought. So I did a little experiment this week.
Okay.
I called 311 because my question is not of an emergency nature, so I didn't want to get in no trouble. So I called 311 and asked them, and surprisingly, nobody knew the answer to that question, to my question of, do I have to follow what the 911 operator tells me to do if I was in what I considered a life or death situation. Yesterday I called 311 again, and I actually got an officer. And the officer said, no, I do not have to follow what the 911 operator says to do because he or she is not there.
Okay.
So any advice that they give you, they're basing that based on what you're telling them.
Okay, right. Now, caller, I love your comment and your questions. We have ran out of time. I ask you, please call back next week. We're going to bring this topic back again because it's of great interest to our viewers. Call back next week. We say to our viewers, our callers, Mr. Wright, thank you for another great show. We appreciate your participation in our show. Have a safe weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Good night.